Oh hey, what's up skate fam? Welcome to D's Skates. You're watching the 2020 holiday episode. Aren't these skates fascinating? Ever since I was a little kid, I wondered what it was like to skate in them. So this year I decided to get myself a Christmas present, and I bought myself a set. Interestingly enough, whenever I was doing research on them, I put the model number into Google, and I actually discovered that this specific pair came from the Sears and Roebuck Christmas catalog of 1956. Isn't that neat? As I started reading about these skates, I realized for somebody who's been skating his whole life, I really don't know that much about the history of roller skating. So I started researching, and man, did I find a wealth of knowledge. I can't even begin to express how difficult it was to find it though. You would think something like roller skating that's popular all over the world would have a rich history that is just laid out for anyone to go and find. But I found that that wasn't the case. I had to do a whole lot of research for this episode. In fact, I brought along a notebook because there's so much information I had to dig up just to be able to present to you the history of roller skating between the early 1700s and about the year 1908. Now I know roller skating really had a boom in the 1900s, and that's why we're not going to cover the 1900s just yet. We're going to do that in another episode. So today, join me on the journey of skating through history. In the early 1700s, there was a man named Hans Brickner, a Dutchman to be exact. He invented the first roller skate. Actually, nobody knows that. It's just a rumor that Brickner even existed. Most sources will tell you that we don't know who the first person to create the roller skate really is. But this is the first talked about instance in history. There are no direct records, but it's said that Brickner was a skier and that he invented something that we would probably see today as more of a land ski than a roller skate. There are rumors that it was called the Skeeler. But again, there's no description of these, and we can really only guess what it might have looked like. The first known and documented instance of roller skates we'll find in 1743 on a stage in London. But again, very little information about this exists. We only know that it happened. So we don't know what these skates looked like, and we don't know what the production was, or at least I wasn't able to find it. John Joseph Merlin is the officially credited inventor of the roller skate. In fact, he invented his roller skate in 1760. Merlin was a really fascinating character. He worked on clocks and invented some clocks. He even made a clock that's powered by atmospheric pressure with another inventor named John Cox. He also created what's known today as the MERLIN band clock, a very complex machine. So fascinating, and when I looked this up, I was just blown away that someone in the 1700s could invent something like this. He was also a well-known music instrument maker. He did lots of groundbreaking work on pipe organs and even made violins. Most notably though, and what I think is the coolest invention other than the roller skate of course, is what's known as the Silver Swan automaton. The Silver Swan is a mechanical swan made of solid silver. I can't even imagine what it's worth today. But in the 1700s, this must have been an unbelievably large project. It's even said that Charles Babbage himself used to go into Merlin's shop and watch him work on the Silver Swan. Babbage later took the idea of swan automation and transformed it into what we know today as the first computer with the help of Ada Lovelace doing his calculations for him. This device we call the Babbage engine. In 1760, Merlin invented his first and only pair of roller skates. There's a fascinating story along with all of this, which ends up resulting in, well, I'm pretty sure Merlin nearly died. It's said that he dressed up for a masquerade and strapped his metal wheels on his feet, rolled into the masquerade with violin in hand, and crashed right into an expensive mirror, breaking the mirror, the violin, his skates, and quite a few of his bones. As you can guess, skating doesn't really appear in history for at least a couple more decades because people viewed it as terrifying, which is completely understandable because it was a new invention and he didn't put brakes on his skates. In 1789, a character appears named Lodewijk Maximilian van Leyden. He was a Dutchman who is credited for inventing a land skate. However, no drawings from the time period actually exist. And since the camera wasn't invented until... Wait. The camera was invented. It was invented in 1685. So why weren't there any pictures? In fact, speaking of the history of cameras,
David, I am the ghost of Christmas future, and your future is looking grim if you do not stay on topic.
Okay. I get it. Sorry. The next instance of the roller skate in history appears in a German play. It was an ice ballet, in fact. I'll put the name of this ballet on the screen because I don't want to try and butcher the name. But basically, this name translates to the painter or the winter pleasures. When I read about this, I found that there were many articles claiming that the play existed, but they all seemed to make the same claims with similar wording, and I almost couldn't find anything about it. So I started wondering, did this play even exist? Or did someone just make this up? Well, as it turns out, this play did exist, but there's really no known information about it. I had to dig in the official Bavarian library in order to find a copy, and I mean an original copy of this play. I have no idea what it's about. This book may even be a program from it rather than the actual script. It's written in German, and this is basically all the information I was able to find on it. So if you happen to speak German and you know that you can translate this, I'd be really interested to know what it's about. I'll have links in the description below so you can find the whole document and look at it yourself. Now, the very next year is when we see the first patent for roller skates come into play in history. Very fascinating. In fact, I brought along a special guest from the country it was patented in to tell you a little bit more about it.
November 12th, 1819. It was a day where we could see the very first patent for a pair of inline skates made by Charles-Louis PETITBLED. Thank you, man. Right, so his skates were actually inline skates but with 3 wheels. You know, today's trend with tri-skates is not really a novelty, it's more like a very strong comeback. Anyway, these skates were made in order to make figure skating moves, you know, the ones you make in the ice skating rink, available to you outside of the ice skating rink. Did it work? Not really. Like, these skates were made out of wood or metal, and they were the type of skates you would attach to your shoes. Imagine the ankle support with those. Plus, we had some reports saying that it was difficult to turn with them. Well, before I leave, I also have an extra story to tell you. In the late 1840s, in Germany, there was a tavern called Corsohalle. Sorry for my bad German accent. So, in this tavern, we could see the workers skating around, doing some little tricks before going to their clients asking for their orders. I mean, how cool was that, right? Like, I wish we could still see this today. Like, the last memory of something similar of it I have is when I was a kid and it was in a supermarket where we could see the workers skating around because the place was so big. But they were using quad skates and I thought that was amazing, and it was even before I started skating. How cool was that? I wish we could still see this today. Anyway, thank you very much for having me, David, and I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Like, an actual good year.
Thanks for that interesting piece of history, Tiago. It's so fascinating that this model of roller skate became part of German beer culture. I've always wondered what it would be like to own a restaurant where all of the service staff roller skated. And it's really cool to know that this trend actually started in the 1800s. The next roller skate, though, is the most fascinating in all of history to me, personally. Here we turn our attention to the year 1823, where a man named Robert John Tyers invents a skate called the Volito. Now, depending on where you search on the internet, you'll find this skate referred to as the Roletto, the Rolito, but the official patent that I dug up claims that the name of this skate, the official name of this skate, is the Volito. The inventor, Tyers, was an ice skater, and he wanted to recreate the ice skating experience on the road. So he invented a 5-wheel inline skate frame that straps to the bottom of the wearer's shoe. It states in the patent that the center wheel is the largest, followed by the 2 wheels outside of it being slightly smaller and the 2 wheels outside of those being even smaller. It's also said that if all wheels are the same size, that the center wheel would be lower, with the 2 next to it being slightly raised and the 2 outside of those being raised even more. This invention is very similar to the modern frame we know as Wizard progressive rocker frames. In fact, it's so similar that I kind of wonder if Leon Basin took inspiration from the Volito skate when he made the progressive rocker Wizards. Now, before this period in time, we do know that all of the roller skates that have been recorded are of an inline design. The quad skate has not been invented yet. So it's pretty clear that this was the first of the inventions that was created with a rocker in the attempt to make it turn like the ice skate could turn. However, the patent states that the wheels should be made of metal, wood, or even ivory, and none of these materials are really able to grip any surfaces very well. So I can imagine that it didn't work out and the Volito didn't really take off. It kind of falls off in history and we never hear of it again. In 1828, a Vienna-born clockmaker named August Lohner invents a tricycle skate. And in typical clockmaker fashion, he of course put gears in this skate. In fact, it's said that the skate couldn't roll backward. Could you imagine today trying to use a skate that can't roll backward? It seems like such a limited design, but at the time, nobody could really skate very well, in roller skates anyway, and a big fear must have been that the wearer could start rolling backward and lose control of their skates. So this attempt was admirable, but it wouldn't work in the modern day, and I'm kind of glad that it didn't take off. Imagine how limited we would be in our skill. Now we move on to 1852, where a man named Joseph Gidman applies for a patent that describes the first roller skate with ball bearings. It's kind of hard to believe that this was also a flop at the time. No one took to it, and the ball bearings don't show up in history for at least another 3 decades or so. Now, a major question that I have is why the first inventors of skates, or the earlier inventors of skates, didn't think to put ball bearings in their wheels. Ball bearings date back as early as 40 AD, and there are even records from Leonardo da Vinci himself of ball bearing wheels that he had invented. So the ball bearing dates back way prior to even the first thoughts of roller skating that we know of. Maybe if the inventor of the Volito had used ball bearings in his design and then also added wheels that grip the skating surface a little better, his design might have taken off. But that's not how it happened. Reuben Schaller in 1860 is credited with the very first roller skate, which is again an inline design, that has wheels which grip the skating surface. They were made from, I believe, wood or metal, but they had an elastic or rubber band. In fact, the patent states that you could even use leather, but the inventor preferred India rubber to be wrapped around the wheel and used as a tire. However, the design didn't follow the Volito's rocking shape. It was still a flat design, like most other designs in history. So at this point, we're still struggling to find a skate design that can actually turn like ice skates. These skates don't really have edges that grip the ground. Can you imagine skating with metal wheels and slipping all over the place? And then going to the ice and being able to grip the surface? So which do you think that people are gonna choose? Well, at the time, ice skating was much more popular for that reason. Schaller saw this and patented his invention to try and remedy it. Unfortunately for Schaller, his invention didn't seem to take off very well either. And our first big roller skating boom occurs when a man named James Leonard Plimpton invents what we now know as the quad skate. Plimpton's patent came to light in 1863 and featured a skate with 4 wheels, 2 side by side in the front and 2 side by side in the back. The patent describes a fixture in the center of each pair of wheels held together by metal springs or rubber cushions. It's said that Plimpton invented this skate because his doctor told him basically, hey, you're not very athletic and you need to start skating. That will be a great athletic pastime for you, so you should just ice skate. Well, Plimpton wanted to be able to skate year-round and not just on the ice when it was cold. So he invented the quad skate to remedy that. In fact, he noticed that people really struggled with the modern roller skates of his time. So he invented the quad skate as an easier method of skating. He tried to tailor it to the beginner audience and wanted people to take to his invention of all skill levels, not just people who were ice skaters trying to find a way to skate during the summer. This patent led to massive involvement in the skating industry by Plimpton. He ended up opening the first skating rink, and he even created a business model for rinks and started selling his quad skates to those rinks only. There's a period of time where he won't even sell these skates to individuals, so you have to go to a rink and rent the skates, or I guess maybe buy the skates through the rink. I don't know. I wasn't able to find that information. But what I do know is that Plimpton is basically the pioneer of the modern roller skating culture. His business model took off in Europe and in Australia. In fact, in Australia, a man named George Coppin, who was a famous Australian actor that had been born in England and moved to Australia in his 20s, discovered the roller skate by meeting Plimpton himself. Oh, I've actually got a newspaper here that has a quote from Coppin about how he got the inspiration for his very first patent that he filed in Australia.
The most enjoyable night I had in this country was at the Fifth Avenue Skating Assembly, a club very exclusive in the admission of members, the most liberal in their invitations to kindred societies. They meet there 3 nights a week and give grand entertainments at the opening and close of their season. I was honoured by an invitation through the kindness of Mr. Plimpton, the inventor and patentee of the roller and ice skates, to whom thousands are in debt for amusement and vigorous health. A more novel, animated, picturesque and elegant scene I never beheld. The members of the club dress in uniforms, ladies with petticoats down to the ankle, tight jackets, and a cap trimmed with fur, ankle boots with skates attached.
So you can see that George Coppin was very enamored by Plimpton's business design, and he went on to file his own patent and use his stage platform as a comedic actor to promote the roller skate and the skating industry within Australia. We have a huge boom here in Australian history, and a family crops up here known as the Byers or the Bayers. I'm not really sure how it's pronounced, but the Bayers family starts investing in real estate and begins opening rinks specifically in Victoria. Interestingly enough, a pair of women in the family known as the Meur sisters are really famous for being involved in roller polo. So this is the first instance we have in roller skating history where women get really involved and it's documented and paid attention to, because at the time, women weren't really welcome in sport. However, the Meur sisters were very well-known competitive skaters. And it's clear here that PLIMPTON not only had a huge impact on the American roller skating scene, but in other portions of the world as well. While all this was going on in Australia, PLIMPTON was still filing patents and involving himself more and more in building up the roller skating culture and the business foundation of roller skating. He filed for at least 2 more patents that I know of, the last one being in 1908. And he's also well known for establishing coursework so that they could document their progress and become better at skating over time. Now we take all of these things for granted. Most of us don't know what it's like to have to skate on wheels that slip every which way, and we have regular access to urethane wheels and modern technology of the 21st century. So it's really interesting to look back and see the struggles of the skating industry and know that there were people who loved skating so much that they were willing to skate on those terrible, terrible designs, or at least what we would consider to be a terrible design today. I know that there's much more history that happens beyond this, but unfortunately we're out of time. And if I were to span the roller skating history between the 1900s to today, it would take twice as much time because a boom occurs in the 1950s and goes beyond into the disco culture of Black America. This is personally my most favorite period of skating history, and we will cover it eventually. But for now, I just want to thank you for coming. And while I'm handing out thanks, I want to give a big thank you to Jody Marie Christie, a lady from Central Victoria, Australia, who contacted me when she discovered that I was going to be making this episode. Jody has a degree in history and had actually written a very fascinating piece on the history of roller skating in Australia, which will be published on the official Victoria State skating website. As soon as it becomes available, I'll have links in the description below this video so that you can check out this work for yourself. Also, I'll put all of the sources for topics I discussed in the description below. And I also want to give a huge shout out to my friend Jacob. You may know him as the Aussie Inline skater. He did the voice of George COPPIN while I was reading that not so old newspaper. And finally, a huge thanks goes to Tiago Inline Skater for filming his portion of this video and taking part in some of the behind the scenes stuff. We had loads of discussion about the history of skating before I filmed this, and a lot of things that Tiago mentioned to me were very inspiring in my research. So thank you to everyone who participated. This really ended up being a much bigger project than I expected it to be, but I had a lot of fun researching and I had a lot of fun talking about it with you today. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation and that it's made you appreciate just what we all have in terms of skating gear and equipment in the modern age. Happy holidays, thanks for coming, and I will see you the next time I lace up.
Oh, and one last thing. I want to give a huge shout out to my good friend Lemiron Starling for lending me his awesome filming skills to make this scene that you see here.
Santa's coming to visit. No, he wouldn't miss it. Christmas times. Oh, and the sunset is just getting better on a blanket with the skyline painted in blue. Ooh, yeah, that's what we do. Doesn't matter if the snow is falling or the wind blows in the